Okay, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Malden Talks. Today is Saturday, May 9th, 2020. On today's show, we have our esteemed guest, Nichole Mossalam. Nichole's running she's a candidate for state representative, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself, what she does, and some of the issues and platforms she's going to be talking about on the campaign trail. So Nichole, could you please start us off? Could you introduce yourself and basically just tell us a little bit about yourself to start with?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Nichole Mossalam. I'm running for state representative of 35th Middlesex District. It covers portions of both Malden and Medford. So a little bit about myself is that we moved here in 2013 from Salt Lake City, Utah. Loved the skiing and the hiking. We were very active. And we chose Malden to settle down, make our home, and raise our family. And we've really grown, very much in love with the community here, and recently bought a home, going on almost 2 years now in our new home, actually. Time flies. But, since then we've become very active within the community, especially the interfaith community. My day job, so to speak, is, director and consulting for various mosques in the area, helping them with programming, community outreach, dealing with administrative work, being able to keep themselves self-sustaining. So that's pretty much what I specialize in. But
okay, so how about this? That's great. Let's talk a little bit about this whole COVID-19 thing. It's been about 100 years or so since we've had something this nasty hit the world. How has it affected you? How's your family coping? What's a typical day like for you during this pandemic?
to be honest with you, it's been pretty brutal. And I know it's been that way for a lot of families too. Right before the stay-at-home orders were issued, we all became very ill with what was presumed to be COVID. And I'll tell you, I never want to be that sick again. It wasn't good. And it was very
I
difficult.
understand. I've been tested twice already. At Cambridge Health Alliance, I got my positive negative test, came back negative. And last week, I went to AFC Urgent Care here in Malden, and I got my antibody test, which also came back negative.
Oh, be careful.
Normally, that would be it's considered better to be tested positive for the antibodies, but not in my case. Because my wife and I care for my wife's elderly mother. She's very sick and very old. It's if basically our decision is if I had it, then it's practically a death sentence for my mother-in-law. So the longer we can stay without getting it, the better. But, for normal people, regular people like you, if you're not caring for elderly people, it's probably best that if you've been through it and you have the antibodies, then you're safer in general. That's the assumption.
I'm hoping to go and do the antibody test soon to, make doubly sure that that's what it was, and that hopefully we'll be okay. But I really, what you're saying, it's very personally close to home. We recently lost my 101-year-old Nona. My aunt, who was taking care of her, contracted COVID and was in and out of the hospital. And then my Nona, she was 101 years old, and she was already on her way out, but it's suspected she spiked a high fever and also caught COVID and passed in a very difficult manner.
That's the scenario my family's trying to avoid right now.
Yeah.
So for me, I do a lot of work in the community, like you.
Hmm.
So being out and meeting a lot of people, even now, it's considered dangerous. But then
Yes.
again, working in a supermarket, working in a grocery stores or anywhere, it's the same thing. It's a danger. Um,
Yes.
but but let's let's jump around a little bit. Let's segue from this personal stuff and let's try to talk a little bit about your campaign.
Yes.
Um, I have some broad topic categories to ask you about. Okay, bear with me. I'm not, you know, an expert in a lot of this, so I'm going to ask you some broad categories, and if you could sort of explain your platform, where you hope to go, and what your viewpoints on these broad topics are. The first one we're going to talk about is your views on the clean environment.
As a mother of three children, I believe it's vitally important. I mean, look what's happening this weekend. We got that Arctic blast coming down.
Yes.
You know, in the middle of May, uh, weather is becoming more difficult. Viruses like what we have right now with COVID, those are also suspected to be tied to climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And things, all scientists agree, about 90% of the scientific community agrees
Mm-hmm.
that climate change is an immediate and imminent threat
Mm-hmm.
to the survival of our planet and of human beings. And I want to make sure that our children inherit a world that's better than the one that we had. And
And you'll push for legislation that gears towards those specific goals, I presume?
definitely. And we need to keep that in mind with all of our decisions. Take example, one platform issue that we have right now is infrastructure and public transit.
Mm-hmm.
I've been throughout the district, and I'm sure everyone can agree we have many potholes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
We have uh, dangerous sidewalks for the elderly, the disabled, and for our children. So our infrastructure, the lead pipes that are carrying our water,
Mm-hmm.
these are all things that are at a moment where we need to invest into it and upgrade. And while we're doing that, we should be mindful of our decisions and the impact that it has on our climate change. So we should be making decisions of when we choose materials, how environmentally friendly are they? When we choose, designs, are they public transit and family friendly? So
Mm-hmm.
these are all things that we can comprehensively be keeping in mind so that we don't have such an immediate perspective. We need to have a long-term perspective.
Well, as you're talking, it brings up something sort of controversial
Hmm.
that's going on right now concerning the climate, kind of circling back to the whole pandemic thing.
Hmm.
You notice how clean the skies are? We can
Yes.
see the stars, we can see 40, 50 miles away. Um, I'm not sure what to think of that yet because we've slowed down society so much. We're not driving, we're not flying, we're not shipping. So much has stopped that the air quality's gone up 100, 200, 5,000% in some places. It's kind of hard to wrap your brain around. I don't know if you have a specific thoughts or patterns or way you want to address that, but I just found it interesting that we have so much cleaner environment now. But the price seems to be we do nothing. I don't know how to think about that. What do you think?
I believe it's a wake-up call. It very clearly demonstrates that our environment is directly impacted by our choices and by what we do, and that the earth and our atmosphere and our environment are completely able to recover at this point in time. I mean, we're seeing it right before our eyes.
And it
And
was so fast.
exactly. So I don't believe that the takeaway message, though, is that we have to take such drastic measures as what we're seeing right now with a complete shutdown of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm
Maybe,
the type of,
maybe a greater transition towards electric vehicles. That
yeah,
would, that would, I mean, that's the big one right there, in
yeah.
my opinion.
I think now that, I'm one of those types of people where I've been through a lot in my life. I've been through many hardships. And how I get through them is that you always got to look for that silver lining. Each hardship, each difficulty, there is a learning moment. And I believe there are many that we can learn from the current situation so that it's not all so negative. And we need to be looking forward, and we need to continue life. And in this one, like I said, we're learning the benefits of a clean environment. And hopefully that will act as an incentive for individuals to be able to say, hold on, it's time to start making different choices.
You're right. Okay, let's go on to another broad topic that is part of your platform. Can you tell us where you stand on the topic of accessible communities?
Oh, that is a big one and very near and dear my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, some people may not know I'm also the chair for the Malden Disability Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been learning a lot in that role. Just to be able to be a member of this commission, one of the requirements is that you yourself have a disability or you're caring for someone who has a disability. And in my case, I have a very rare genetic disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be in a wheelchair.
Wow.
Yeah. People who are close to me, they see how active I am. I'm very active in the community. I'm always going. But there was a point in time when I went undiagnosed, and that's a whole nother ballpark with our healthcare system, which I'm also very involved in, healthcare advocacy. But I hit a very low point with my health. And so I very much appreciate what I have. And I have that perspective of being in a wheelchair and the difficulties that are presented with that, as well as the difficulties of being able to integrate into society when you don't really have the full physical capabilities of everybody else.
I know how you feel.
Yeah.
Over time, I've been in and out of wheelchairs and crutches and different
Wow.
speeds in my life, but it's not about me. We're talking about you, and that's this topic.
But all of
I,
us.
I think this is something we really didn't know about you. At least I didn't. So this is good information.
Oh,
Okay, so let's skip along because that's a very we could go on for hours on accessibility issues.
yes.
Another platform topic that you're running on is public education. Could you tell us something about your stance and your ideas where you want to go with the whole concept of public education?
I believe we've become too narrow-minded about education. And part of that is because of the extreme budget cuts that we've had to endure throughout the years.
Mm,
Massachusetts, I have to say, does have a fabulous education system. Like I said, I came here from Utah. I was educated in Utah, where we had classroom sizes of upwards to 35, 40 students in a classroom with just one teacher. We didn't have aides in the classrooms like they do here. And my graduating class had individuals in it who could barely read, like literally at the C spot run level. And, so I've seen that type of education system, and this one where I went to go and enroll my son into kindergarten for the first time, and I was shocked that we didn't have to pay any fees, because in Utah, every year per child, it's $100 to $200 in fees
wow.
for enrollment. Yeah. So I want to say first and foremost that I appreciate our education system, but that is no reason to rest on our laurels and say this is good enough, because it's not. These children are our future. You have to remember these are the workers for the next generation, the innovators for the next generation. And if our economy is going to stay strong and healthy, then our children need to be prepared to compete in a global economy and how to think for themselves.
You know
The
what?
Massachusetts state constitution, it says that one of the purposes of education is for a functioning democracy, so that people are able to think for themselves and understand the issues that they're voting on. So,
This is a topic pretty close to me.
yes.
We won't go into that.
So, I think all of this we need to keep in mind, and we're not investing in our future enough. And I am so ecstatic that the Student Opportunity Act passed. However, this piece of legislation is merely a promise. It is not funded. It does not have a funding mechanism yet. And
not only is there not a funding mechanism, I'm concerned what funding that does exist is going to get siphoned off for other things because of the economic uncertainty that we're in now. It's bad. But like I said, I don't want to go too far down that road.
No,
otherwise I'll be talking for the next hour.
That is a big concern. So as the budget, the legislature is looking at the next fiscal year budget, these are tough decisions that they're going to have to make, and frankly said, they're going to have to look at other revenue streams from individuals who can afford to do so. And they're going to have to decide where their priorities are. When we look at funding, when we put money into prisons versus schools,
yes,
that says a lot about what we value as a society. I'm more about our future and investing in our future. We need to have that long-term view. So we do need to invest in education, and we need to look at education more broadly. We need to be looking at teaching life skills, being able to budget, being able to, sew holes in your clothes, basic sewing class, being able to, do the basics of caring for a vehicle, but also, trades. It's not just about academia. Academia is great. That's where my husband's at. But we need plumbers, and we need electricians, and we need a variety of fields, and not everybody is suited for the same thing. So we need an education system that responds to each child individually and helps them to shine in their areas. And we also need to be teaching topics like philosophy and looking at the writings of the founding fathers of the Constitution. When they wrote the Constitution, they didn't just pull these thoughts out of thin air. No, they looked at the philosophers and the great thinkers before them. So in order to understand our form of government, you really need to understand where those thoughts and those ideas came from.
I completely agree with you. Can I tell you a little secret about myself?
Sure.
I remember clearly, I'm from a different generation. I'm probably a bit older than you. One of the things I recall as a child being so proud of was coming home one day from school and showing my parents the beautiful apron I sewed in class that day.
Yeah.
And children were taught a different way, were taught different things, and it was no big deal. I'm talking back in the early 1970s. Everybody had to learn things, and this is what we got in school. We don't get things so much like that in school anymore.
Yeah.
Things like shop, it wasn't until I joined the military I learned, how to take the transmission out of the car and replace it. But I had to go take that shop class on my own. It's interesting, but let's move on. um, something that sort of dovetails into a bunch of the different topics you've talked about on your platform.
Uh-huh.
Um, could you tell us about your take on fair housing?
Yes. That's something we definitely need to address. And it's happening at all levels. People who are just barely moving here and who are renting, to individuals who have grown up here, own their homes, and are getting priced out as property prices rise, and
Mm-hmm.
have been here for generations. So, and everybody in between. The market is going up so quickly that you know families can't survive anymore, and family homelessness is on the rise in Massachusetts. The numbers, frankly, are very alarming. uh, you know where I live, I pass a bus stop uh, when I go to my errands, and there's an individual in a wheelchair who lives inside the bus stop,
Oh,
and it breaks my heart every time I pass by. And I should mention, just in case I get a little emotional, um, I was homeless as a child.
mm-hmm.
So I understand the impact that food insecurity and housing insecurity and family instability has on the growth and development of a child. And so we need to tackle affordable housing. There's many mechanisms right now that various individuals are looking at. Rent control
Mm-hmm.
is something that's looking to make a comeback. I think, that is definitely something we should be looking at while learning from the lessons of the past. Uh, we need to make sure that we're building affordable housing. I hear all this housing being built in Malden, and they keep saying that, oh, the more housing stock we have, the prices are going to go down. But
No,
in fact, the opposite has been true. And what they've been building, frankly, are apartments that there's no way a family would be able to afford, let alone a single individual striking out for the first time on their own. These are
they're luxury apartments.
they're luxury apartments, very high end. So I believe that we need to be looking at mechanisms such as for every housing unit that's built, we need to make sure X amount is set aside for affordable housing. And we need to redefine what affordable housing is. To be honest with you, this area is a very working class area.
But
So,
that's sort of a catch-22
mhm.
because we're so close to downtown Boston and we're at the end of the orange line. It's how do you fight against that? It's the market is so hot.
Part of that, I believe, is looking at increasing transportation. They're looking at the east-west rail line. Western Massachusetts is very rural. It's very sparsely populated. If we could get more high-speed rail to various parts of the state, then people would be able to look at housing further away from Boston and have a reliable commute to and from work. So then we're not trying to pack everybody into just, like sardines in this one little area. And that's part of the issue, is the jobs are here.
That's right.
That's the main thing. The jobs are here.
I
And
can see the jobs are here.
Mhm.
People are being packed here, but some people who are priced out of the market are being forced further and further out. So
Yeah.
then they're getting in cars and driving in, which is adding to the environmental issues.
And
So,
our traffic.
yeah, it's a giant circle of issues. I see all the different things you're working on.
Yeah. And so that's why I say, sometimes you have to take a step back and look at these issues comprehensively, and how, and take a holistic approach. So yes, we do have various issues that we're focusing in on, but we're looking at them within this picture of the whole.
Mm.
And so when we look at affordable housing, we're also looking at How can public transportation alleviate, this problem and, increase the housing stock and increase workers being able to move further out while getting reliably to and from work? And if anything, corporations and businesses should be jumping at the chance to to invest in something like this, because that's their workers. If a worker can get to their job site on time, reliably every single day, that's an increase in productivity for them. And not just that, but there's several studies that have come out that for every dollar that you invest in public transit, you get $4 back in economic returns. So we're not just looking at pie in the sky issues or solutions. We're looking at them from the how do they benefit everybody as well. These are good things for society, and I believe that people just need to look at it and say it's just like buying a home.
Mm-hmm.
You're making that initial upfront investment, and yes, it's a little pricey. It's a big, down payment that you're making up front. But what gains are you getting back in return as your home appreciates in value, and that's concrete, something that you will always own, that's not subject to the fluctuations of the market,
Yes.
or too much, I should say.
Yeah. So I'm going to sort of throw out something that I suppose is more of a philosophical sort of request. The pandemic, officially the governor has extended it till the 18th of May, but the cascading side effects, as we're seeing from Boston and surrounding towns, like for instance in Boston, every large scale event's been canceled through Labor Day. So there's going to be a lot of social distancing. There's going to be a lot of side effects from this whole pandemic thing that's going to last through a good chunk of time. Do you have any feelings or suggestions how we could take what we've learned from what we're going through now and how we could possibly change as a community or a society after we get through this pandemic, whatever it is?
Well, I believe current circumstances have really highlighted how fragile our economy is and the economic health of families and our society. I mean, you have frontline workers who are not being provided with necessary personal protective equipment.
Mm-hmm.
We have grocery store workers who are dying from performing their duties.
Oh.
And part of this is that most families are living paycheck to paycheck. They don't get sick leave. They don't get to go to the doctor when they want to, because even if you have insurance, maybe the co-pays are too high. It can be very cost prohibitive. I tell you, with 3 kids, we get one illness in the family. Thank God we can afford it. We're blessed. But when I was younger, on the income that my mom had, no, we couldn't go. We didn't have that option. It would have been that, or choosing to pay rent or getting groceries. These are very difficult decisions that families are being faced with.
I understand. I have 3 children as well.
Yeah.
And I'm in the uncomfortable spot of facing possible furlough coming up pretty soon.
Oh.
So then we have to figure out how we're going to deal with that going forward. I understand exactly what you're describing.
Yes.
I guess there's just really no good answer going forward. We're just adapting to what's happening around us.
Well, I believe we need to. The problem is we've been legislating and creating policies from the top down. It's time that people understand that our society is only as strong as its weakest member. And we need to, in the wealthiest country in the world, in one of the strongest economies and the greatest democracies, and a country built on spirituality. We all talk about how we're people of faith, but yet we cannot grasp the concept of making sure that everybody has a livable wage, that everybody has access to basic health care, that families are able to build up savings to be able to absorb stuff like this. Right now, we're in a position where government is having to give checks to families just so that they can make ends meet, and it's still not enough. I believe these are all highlighting issues that people need to wake up to. And I'm someone who came from the bottom. I know that these have been issues for a very long time, and my family together, we have clawed our way up, so to speak. We've worked really hard. And I've encountered the problems within the system of what keeps people down. And I'm stubborn. I'll be honest. I'm very stubborn. And that is the only reason. I'm more stubborn than a mule, I'll tell you.
I'll tell you what. Okay.
But that's what it takes.
Well, how about this? Okay, we're kind of winding down now.
Okay.
So what I'd like to ask you to do is a closing statement. What would you like to know the people and the voters of the district you're running in Massachusetts to know about you? Give us a closing statement.
What I would say is that I've been there. I've been at the bottom. I know what it's like to have absolutely nothing, and to be someone who takes pride in their work, who works hard every single day, whether it's appreciated or not. And I understand what everybody's going through right now. And I believe it takes someone with that perspective to be able to help craft and implement policy at a statewide level that all of us can benefit from. And that's what I bring to the table. I'm someone who's looking to the future. I'm someone who is going to be mindful of each policy decision and how it's affecting everybody across the board, and is going to weigh it and make sure that we implement things that benefit as many people as possible.
How can voters contact you? Please give us your website, email. How can voters get in touch with you? Just put it out there.
It's votemossalam.com, VOTEMOSSALAM.com. You can also reach me at my email, Nichole, NICHOLE, at NicholeMossalam.com. So I really hope that you reach me. Oh, and I have a phone number even if you want to, 339-224-4324. Yeah, I'm very accessible. Please reach out. And while I may not be flashy all the time with what I do, I guarantee you, I'm someone who's out there in the community, and I never turn anybody away.
Thank you very much. That's great. Okay, well, what I want to do is to close out. I want to thank you very much. I want to wish you and everyone else a happy Mother's Day. And we're going to sign off of this episode of Malden Talks. Today's episode featured Nichole Mossalam, candidate for state rep, and she's going to work hard to earn your vote and to represent us in the State House. Thank you, Nichole.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.